won't hear this on the radio.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. Is the price worth it? The price, we think the price is worth it.
Listen, I really think the media is...
Because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club.
Could you look me in my eyes and just lie to me?
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
They burn these fucking people alive because the message they want to convey to you is state power will always win.
You're listening to Below the Tension Podcast.
Open up your eyes, 'cause maybe it's our lies. I'm trying to make them break.
What is going on, everyone? Thank you for joining me on this Wednesday episode. I do episodes every Wednesday and every Saturday evening. You can catch me on YouTube, Below the Tension, Facebook, Below the Tension, iTunes, Below the Tension, and you can tweet me right now directly at Slav Libertarian on Twitter. Tell me you like the show. Tell me you hated it. Tell me I'm an idiot. Tell me you love me. Whatever. I'll respond. Hit me up on there and give me a follow. I will follow you back. I have a ton of news today. I have some really big marijuana news and Stingray cell phone technology news. I have a lot of foreign policy today as well, including the reported beginning of the end of ISIS and more troops, U.S. troops to Iraq. And of course, it seems like I have some Venezuelan updates every episode, and I do today as well. But to the top story and what you probably already have heard, Bernie Sanders last night conceded officially to Hillary Clinton and endorsed her for president. Now, this is not something that was unforeseen, but if you were on social media last night, you would have thought that some of his supporters didn't even see this coming. Like they refused to believe, and in some cases still refuse to believe, that it's over for him and them. I had one particular young lady tweet me that she still thinks that he could do a delegate flip at the convention and still pull this out. This is how disconnected from reality some of these people are. But by the same token, I was able to throw some information at her, and she says she is currently looking into Gary Johnson. So it's not all for nothing for some of these people. Now, that's not to say that I endorse any one candidate or another, but if somebody's going to vote anyways, you might as well have them vote for a third party. I don't care if it was libertarian, communist, fascist party, whatever it would be. I believe strongly that breaking down this two-party duopoly is really going to at least push things in the right direction. So I'm very pragmatic, and you have to take steps towards where you're going, and introducing a viable third party will shake the core of politics in the United States forever, or for a very long time in its future. Now, moving on to all of the news today, Stingray, a judge has knocked down Stingray a peg. In first U.S. judge orders Stingray evidence thrown out. For the first time, a federal judge has suppressed evidence obtained without a warrant by U.S. law enforcement using Stingray technology, a surveillance device that can trick suspects' phones into revealing their locations. This is huge news for civil liberties advocates. U.S. District Judge William Pauley in Manhattan on Tuesday ruled that the defendant, Raymond Labus' rights were violated when the DEA used such a device without a warrant. Quote, absent a search warrant, the government may not turn on a citizen's cell phone and use it as a tracking device, Pauley wrote. The ruling marked for the first time a federal judge suppressing evidence obtained by using Stingray, according to the ACLU. This opinion strongly reinforces the strength of our constitutional privacy rights in the digital age, ACLU attorneys wrote. Stingray, also known as cell site simulators, mimic cell phone towers in order to force cell phones in the area to transmit pings back to the Stingray device, enabling law enforcement to track phones and pinpoint the phone's location. Huge news on that side. Hacking essentially people's cell phones without warrants. Good precedent that sets there in New York. And our other top story in marijuana news, one striking chart shows why pharma companies are fighting illegal marijuana. There's a body of research showing that painkillers abuse and overdose are lower in states with medical marijuana. Now, a new study released validates these findings by proving clear evidence of the missing link in causal chain running from medical marijuana to falling overdoses. In 17 states with medical marijuana laws in place, prescription painkillers and other classes of drugs fell sharply compared with states that did not have medical marijuana. The drops were significant. In medical marijuana states, the average doctor prescribed 265 fewer doses of antidepressants, 486 fewer doses of seizure medication, 541 fewer anti-nausea doses, and 562 fewer doses of anti-anxiety medication. But most strikingly enough, the typical physician in a medical marijuana state prescribed 1,826 fewer doses of painkillers per year. Incredible. The medicine that comes from the earth is best for us. Who would have guessed it? As a sanity check, the researchers ran a similar analysis on drug categories that pot typically is not recommended for, such as blood thinners, antiviral drugs, and antibiotics. And on those drugs, they found no changes in prescription patterns as passage of marijuana laws changed. This provides strong evidence that the observed shifts in prescribing patterns were in fact due to the passage of medical marijuana. They did it as a control. So when you have a medical marijuana state, a state go medical marijuana, prescriptions for things that medical marijuana do not affect stay the same. But for things that medical marijuana does help, the corresponding prescription drug use fell. Incredible news. Awesome. The tanking numbers for painkillers in medical marijuana states are likely to cause some concern among pharmaceutical companies. You don't say. These companies have a long record of opposition to marijuana reform. You don't say. Such as funding research by anti-pot academics and funneling dollars into groups such as the Community Anti-Drug Coalition, which opposes medical marijuana. You don't say. Pharmaceutical companies have also lobbied federal agencies directly to prevent the liberalization of marijuana laws. You want to fuck with somebody, fuck with their money. And that's exactly what's happening. Awesome. Gay gun groups memberships spike after Orlando. You don't say. Before the Orlando shootings in June, the Pink Pistols, a LGBT gun rights group with more than 45 chapters across the United States, had about 1,500 members. The day after the killing spree, its numbers soared to more than 4,000 and has now gone above 8,000 members. Quote, Orlando, being the largest mass shooting in American history and pointed at gays, I think it was a huge eye-opener for people, said one of its members. The world is not a perfect place. We need to take safety into our own hands. Absolutely. Pink Pistols, which was founded about 20 years ago, promotes safe, legal use of firearms for self-defense for the LGBT community. There are no fees or forms to fill out, and membership is open to everybody. Excellent news there. I like all this good news. Good news. 3 top stories, all good news. Love it. And here's some other interesting news on the home front. Tesla CEO Elon Musk on Sunday tweeted his intention to soon publish part 2 of his, quote, top secret Tesla master plan, following an embattled several weeks for the Silicon Valley heavyweight. The tweet read, working on top secret Tesla master plan part 2, hoping to publish later this week. And I will certainly be looking out for that and giving it to you, hopefully this Saturday. And continuing the good news, as many of you may know, I'm not too much of a fan of Chris Kyle. Now, what he did actually do in combat versus what he said he did, bravery, loyalty, service, these are all subjective values. Did he do things that were difficult and that not many people ever do? Of course. But he is a pathological liar and a truth stretcher. And what really makes me mad about this whole situation is not him himself, is that people that quote unquote support him. You can't say anything disparaging about the dear leader. Well, it's official now. Chris Kyle is a liar. American sniper Chris Kyle loses 3 medals. The Navy has revised the medal count for Chris Kyle, removing 2 Valor Awards from the ex-SEAL's total, including one of his 2 Silver Stars. Kyle originally wrote that he earned 2 Silver Stars in a statement consistent with the Navy's separation form. But last month, the Navy updated the form with the new medal count, removing 1 Silver Star and 2 Bronze Stars. Kyle was also not given credit for Navy Expert Rifle Medal. And some people would say, well, his separation paperwork said that he had those medals, so how was he supposed to know? Or he had every right to claim those things. And I would imagine you would typically get that comment from somebody who has never even been in the military. Because if you had, you would know that you know what kind of medals you got. And maybe that expert rifle thing, that could have been from years past when he first went through training. I can kind of understand that. But you just happen to just forget you didn't earn 3 high-ranked medals. No, what he did is he saw that on his record. He knew he didn't get those, but it made him look better, so he just claimed them because the DD Form 214, which is the separation paperwork, said it, and he could prove it that way. Who would question him when it's on his separation paperwork? He knew he didn't earn those medals. He jazzed up everything, churched it up like his whole story that he wrote about himself. You seen American Sniper? That shit is stretched truth. A lot of it. Just like his service record. And our last bit of domestic news here. After Dallas shooting, U.S. police forces rethink tactics. Police departments across the United States are searching for new tactics for a more difficult era of racial tension and mass shootings and global terrorism. Indianapolis said it would consider using robots to deliver deadly force. Denver's police union wants officers to wear riot gear for local protests and be armed with AR-15s while patrolling the Denver International Airport. New Orleans wants patrol vehicles to be equipped with assault rifles. Indianapolis wants more military-type training and military equipment that is available through the Pentagon. The 1033 program where the police departments get free MRAPs and stuff. Yeah, I live in a town of like 30,000 people, and they have an MRAP completely free. The most immediate change that people will see is the pairing of officers. 13 of the country's 30 biggest cities said that they have already started pairing officers. Albuquerque, one of several cities dealing with officer outrage. Yeah, they killed that bum out in the woods, shot him to death, and then shot him in the ass with a beanbag, and then sent the dog on him and laughed about it, and they said they were going to kill him before they even got there. Yeah, those guys. Pairing officers could mean possibly longer response times for lower priority calls, said its spokesman. They're too busy shooting bums. Thomas Manger, president of the Major Cities Chiefs Association, predicted over the long term that police will increase surveillance and expand their security presence at major events across the country. And get this is a quote. This will cause complaints about violating people's constitutional rights of free assembly, but that's the only way to guarantee safety. This will cause complaints about violating constitutional rights, but so what? From a sworn police officer. Sworn to protect the Constitution. That thing. Moving on to the Venezuela update. Up to 35,000 Venezuelans entered Colombia to buy food and medicine after the border crossing was temporarily opened. Hundreds of Venezuelans began queuing up at 3 a.m. on Sunday. The border crossing links the towns that have been closed since August after 3 Venezuelan soldiers and a civilian were injured in an attack by suspected smugglers. Suspected smugglers. Is that guy that was trying to sneak in sugar and flour? The bridge was open for about 12 hours to allow Venezuelans to reach Colombia so they could buy basic goods as Venezuelans face a deepening crisis. Last week, about 500 Venezuelan women broke through that same barrier to buy goods. Although the goods are more expensive in Colombia, at least the product is available for purchase. Yeah. Kind of nice being able to buy toilet paper to wipe your ass with. And now on to my stack of foreign news. ISIS reportedly preparing for the end of its caliphate, which is good news. Islamic State terror leaders reportedly are preparing for the fall of the so-called caliphate after U.S.-led coalition and Russian-backed forces made significant gains in recent months in Iraq and Syria. But the group vowed to continue its wave of terror attacks abroad. U.S. counterterrorism experts believe that recent large-scale attacks in Istanbul and Baghdad are a sign that its reign in the Middle East is dwindling. I certainly hope so. There was an interesting article that I read a few months back that tried to explain what the Islamic State was, and that person came to the conclusion that if ISIS didn't hold any physical land according to the Quran and Islamic law and all that stuff, that if they didn't hold physical land, they could no longer be considered a caliphate. I don't know if that will play out. The article didn't mention anything about that, but that's something to keep in mind when looking towards the future. U.S. sending 560 more troops to Iraq as Mosul push intensifies. The United States will send 560 troops to Iraq to transform a freshly retaken airbase into a staging hub for the long-awaited battle to recapture Mosul. Now, I was talking about this at work the other day when this article came out. Why would they say that publicly? That 500 U.S. troops are heading to this specific base, this specific number of troops, specifically what they're going to be doing, and why. Why would you put that information out there for ISIS or whoever you're battling? It makes no sense. And I've seen this a lot over the past few years. They'll just say this strategic thing, just put it out there. It's really bizarre from a military strategy standpoint. I don't understand it. Most of the engineers, logistic personnel, security, and communication forces will concentrate on the airbase about 40 kilometers south of Mosul. Asked how long America will continue to send forces to the fight, get this, Carter said that the U.S. is determined to defeat ISIS, and if the commanders need more troops, I'll ask the president for them. So this is an open-ended deployment back into Iraq. Carter told reporters that U.S. advisors are preparing to accompany Iraqi battalions in operations as soon as units begin the Mosul siege. So I love how this all goes. The headlines, this, that, and the other, they're just going there to build the space. Don't worry about it, blah, blah, blah. But in the back of the article, oh, yeah, this whole staging for the Mosul invasion, yeah, we'll have U.S. troops with them. U.S. arms sales on track to reach $40 billion. The U.S. government is on track to approve $40 billion in foreign military sales in 2016 fiscal year that ends October 1st. Global demand for U.S. helicopters and other weapons remains strong. So we're just sell, baby. You want to buy it, bam, 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 bam. We'll give it to you. All the bullets you want. Rare NATO-Russia meeting brings no breakthroughs on contentious issues. NATO allies met Wednesday with Russian officials to ease tensions over Western plans to deploy thousands of troops to the alliance's eastern flank, but hours of contentious talks wielded no breakthroughs. At least they're talking, I guess. That's a good start. The meeting of the NATO-Russian Council was only the second one to convene since Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea that plunged relations to Cold War lows. It also came just days after the landmark NATO summit in which Warsaw set out plans for open-ended deployments to Eastern Europe as a bulwark against Moscow. So, yeah, 4,000 NATO troops will be deployed to that region. Quite the buildup. And our last article of this half-hour podcast, South Korea has announced the deployment of advanced anti-missile system in the Zhejiang County of its country in the south. In a statement, Deputy National Defense Minister said the location of the THAAD battery would maximize the military effectiveness of the THAAD while ensuring the safety of the local population. I talked about this last week about how angry China, Russia, and North Korea were about this, and that I can kind of see why they would be upset, but not really. If you're not going to launch any missiles at South Korea, you don't need to worry about it. It's a purely defensive system, from all that I know. I don't quite understand why they're so pissed off about it. Washington and Seoul announced the battery's deployment last week in a move that outraged North Korea, which has threatened physical acts against THAAD and makes the Allies suffer for a nightmare of extreme uneasiness and terror. South Korea has reiterated that THAAD is purely defensive in nature and will solely be used against North Korea's threat of nukes and missiles. It's a crazy, crazy world, but I was glad I was able to find some good news, at least on the home front, with all the bad news we've had recently. So, everything is not all fucked. Thank you guys for listening. Like I said before, you can find me on YouTube. Please subscribe to my channel, Below the Tension. Give me a like on Facebook, Below the Tension. Subscribe to me on iTunes and give me a 5-star rating. It helps me get my reach out there, Below the Tension. Or you can tweet me directly at Slav Libertarian. You guys have a wonderful rest of your week.